Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. How you feeling on a Wednesday? Feels good to be halfway done, right? Glad to have you here joining us on the show. Smash that like button. Help us to get the message out. More people can listen to the ideas of economic freedom and personal liberty. That's what the Wake Up America show is all about. Yesterday, somebody over on Rumble asked this question. They asked, is this more a libertarian show, a conservative show, or more of a hybrid show? Well, I'll answer that question for you right now. Well, I am a philosophical libertarian, but I like a wide variety of opinions. Hell, I even have liberal Democrats sometimes come on this show and talk to me. I bring on a lot of conservatives. I bring on a lot of libertarians. Basically, anybody that I find interesting or fascinating or has a unique point of view on today's news and politics and current affairs. So it's not really so much a libertarian show or a conservative show. It's just a talk show that's all about ideas and freedom. So I hope that answers your question. And thank you so much to our Rumble audience, by the way. You guys have really stepped it up these days. It's nice to see so many people watching us over there. Make sure that you sign in and click like over there on Rumble so we can continue to grow over there as well. Alternatively, these alternatives to the mainstream media are going to be catching bigger and bigger names as we continue to talk about the fallout from Tucker Carlson leaving Fox News. Judge Napolitano will be joining us on the program later today. Oh yeah. The former senior judicial analyst at Fox News will be joining us to talk about what happened. That should be an interesting interview. You'll get all the insider intrigue that you can get right here on the Wake Up America show. So make sure that you stick around to hear the judge. But if you've got to step away for a minute, that's fine. Just make sure you set an appointment so you can come back and listen to us a little bit later. Should be really good. Let's hear from Studio 314 saying he loves the gun shirt. Nice. Steffi got that for me for my birthday. Thank you, Steffi. We appreciate you very much. The lovely Stephanie Peters. Shirts like this can get you on the FBI, open up! The watch list. But you can get a shirt very similar to this. I made my own version, the neon machine gun shirt over at ap4libertyshop.com. So check that out. If you haven't seen it, you can get it. A lot of people actually did buy the machine gun shirts. The baseball version of this shirt was really popular. People really loved it, but there is a button down version of it as well. All right, enough advertising. Let's talk about the news. Joe Biden announces his reelection campaign. We'll play that clip for you of his message. His central message is freedom. Really, Joe Biden? Really? Freedom is the central message of the Democrats these days? Call me skeptical. I'll play that clip for you here in just a few minutes. But the second big news story is Donald Trump is apparently, quote, listening to insiders who are urging him to make Ron DeSantis his VP pick. What? I was told by very reliable sources that they hate each other and they wouldn't work together and they're all flinging poo at each other's camps. One of the most interesting things, phenomenons in politics is watching people turn on a dime. And that's why there's that old saying, if you want a friend in politics, get a dog. Because the reality is that if you can benefit someone one day, then they're your friend. If your interests are not aligned the next day, they'll stab you in the back and throw you under the bus the next. So I'll play that interview or I'll talk to you about those insider sources that are apparently trying to get the two of them to team up in just a few minutes. You can text the show today. We always love to hear from our listeners at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. Someone said yesterday in the comments that I speak too slowly on this show and that my voice is about as interesting as listening to a cat scratch cardboard, or a cat like licking cardboard is more interesting to listen to than my voice, and which I thought was actually kind of a funny burn. But one of the things that you got to know about this show is that I speak a little bit more slowly because I don't have a teleprompter. everything that you hear from me is actually coming from my brain versus Joe Biden or a lot of people in the media who only speak to you through teleprompters. If I was reading off of a teleprompter for this show, I could speak so much faster and have so much more such easier clarity of thought. But if you hear me sometimes stumbling like that or being cautious with my words or speaking a little bit more slowly, it's because I'm actually thinking and telling you my own thoughts. Can you imagine? Oh my God, what is that? Right? Don't panic. Right? Can you imagine a media figure actually giving you their pure, uncensored point of view? Can get me in trouble sometimes, but it also means that sometimes I might speak a little bit more slowly, if you will. So yeah, we'll talk about the Trump DeSantis news in just a few minutes. I've got Jeremy Cady joining us on the show today at 7:35 about a key vote in support of a House Bill 253 for open enrollment here in the state of Missouri regarding students in public schools. Is this school choice? And will it pass in the state of Missouri? We're going to talk about that with Jeremy Cady. He will be joining us in studio today. You can see he's not there yet, but he will be sitting in that chair right there. And we'll have Jeremy Cady in studio this morning at 7:35 today. It should be a great interview. We're looking forward to talking to Jeremy Cady about their Americans for Prosperity's key vote. I guess there's some drama stirred up between Candace Owens and Steven Crowder. It's girl fight tonight, I guess, if you will. And the only reason I say that is because I saw this character Owen Benjamin on Twitter yesterday calling out Steven Crowder because apparently Steven Crowder and his wife are getting a divorce. Yikes! Uber conservatives getting a divorce. Interesting news. Not on its face, right? Just somebody getting divorced is really not the news. The news is that allegedly Candace Owens believes that she was being accused of extortion by Steven Crowder. Now that's news. What's that all about? So we'll talk about that a little bit today. I've got the clip of Steven Crowder talking about Candace Owens. Andis Cohen's. There's no teleprompter. And I'll play that clip for you and we'll discuss it a little bit. Again, the gossip part about the divorce, I feel bad for Steven Crowder. Obviously, nobody wants to see somebody go through a messy divorce, and he's got kids, and that's a nightmare. But I think that there are some lessons there, and the fact that he's accusing Candace Owens of like trying to screw with him is definitely news. So I've got that clip. We'll play that here in just a little bit. So 8 o'clock we'll talk to Judge Napolitano. I'm looking forward to that. At 8:35, considering that Joe Biden is running for president of the United States again, I think it's worth sharing this article that I read yesterday, which was really fascinating to me, and it's probably something that you will find fascinating as well. But it's called Being Old Today versus Being Old in 1776. Because if you think about it, Benjamin Franklin was like, what, 80 years old in 1776? Which back in 1776, being old then was a lot rougher than being old today. Imagine somebody who was 80 years old becoming president of the United States in 1776. I mean, we're talking about like you'd think ancient then, right? But I found a really good article that sort of compared people's health and their mental health from the 1700s, from how the founding fathers, the older founding fathers, would have fared health wise versus how people who are of that similar advanced age fare today in today's world. And since we're talking about Joe Biden running for reelection for president of the United States, we got to talk about the geriatrics here. Let's listen to what Joe Biden had to say for his reelection campaign ad, though. Take a listen to this. Starts with the January 6 riots. Very clever. Abortion. It's already starting off on a strong note. Freedom.
Personal freedom is fundamental to who we are as Americans.
There's nothing more important, nothing more sacred.
That's been
nothing more important nor nothing more sacred than freedom. Wow, this is already, he sounds like the host of the Wake Up America show himself. He cares about freedom. Do you really care about freedom, Joe? Let's continue.
First term, to fight for our democracy.
This shouldn't be a red or blue issue.
To protect our rights, to make sure that everyone in this country is treated equally and that everyone is given a fair shot at making it. But around the country, MAGA extremists are lining up to take on those bedrock freedoms. Cutting Social Security that you paid for your entire life while cutting taxes for the very wealthy. Dictating what health care decisions women can make. Banning books and telling people who they can love. all while making it more
telling
difficult
people
for you
who
to
they
be
can
able to
love.
vote.
Really?
When I ran for president 4 years ago, I said we're in a battle for the soul of America.
Personal freedom, except if you
And we
don't want to
still
get the
are.
jab. Thank you, John. Very well
The
done.
question we're facing is whether in the years ahead we have more freedom or less freedom, more rights or fewer.
Yeah.
I know what I want the answer to be, and I think you do too. This is not a time to be complacent. That's
Not
why
bad,
I'm
not
running for
bad.
re-election.
I mean, it's good production value. Some people were saying that, oh, this is produced for the TikTok generation, but I mean, it's not just the TikTok generation whose attention spans are disappearing. But I honestly feel like it's a well-produced ad. The message is good. It's just so obviously hypocritical. Let's continue.
Because I know America.
I know America.
I know we're good and decent people. I
I've
know we're
ruled
still a
over you
country that
since the
believes in
70s.
honesty, respect, and treating each other with dignity. That we're a nation where we give hate no safe harbor. We believe that everyone is equal, that everyone should be given a fair shot to succeed in this country.
Thank you for choosing us.
Stand up
Oh,
for
God.
our personal freedom. Stand up for the right to vote and our civil rights. And this is our moment.
Unless you're not one of us, in which case we cast you out of society. When they say our, they really mean theirs, not ours, not yours and mine. We're not a part of this dream or vision, if you'll notice. God love you. Oh, see, you got the pit bull in there.
So if you're
He's
with
pro
me,
pit bull.
go to joebiden.com and sign up. Let's finish this job. I know we can. Because this is the United States of America. There's nothing, simply nothing we cannot do if we do it together.
Let's finish the job. See, these people, they will never, ever let go of power. They will never leave us alone. They will never.
God! No, God, please, no!
It's just so annoying listening to his breathy voice. It's Timothy Peterson. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's quite annoying. So what do you think? Joe Biden, well, the likelihood of Joe Biden becoming president of the United States, unfortunately, it looks pretty high. I'm reading yesterday some new polling coming out that says that nominating Donald Trump ensures Joe Biden a second term and is a disaster for Republicans, according to a Republican pollster. The head of data at Never Back Down 2024, Stephen Wilson, says, since mid-February, Trump is averaging a negative 3.1 points versus Joe Biden. Meanwhile, DeSantis, probably a pro DeSantis polling firm there. We'll see. Meanwhile, DeSantis is plus 1.2 to Joe Biden. Do you believe that? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. 2020 and 2022 election results show Trump's own pollster has him losing to Biden by 3. That's right. Trump's own pollster shows him losing to Biden by 3. The state-by-state polls even worse for Trump. Trump trails in 6 critical 2024 states. Arizona, yikes. Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. DeSantis, however, wins 5 out of 6. Now, what about the down ballot races? Now, in an April 2023 poll, it found that Arizona voters who heard of DeSantis, Biden voted R plus 9 for Congress. And you have to guess that probably a lot of the of the DeSantis problem is just people who've never heard of him. So for people like yourselves and myself who live and breathe the news, and especially if you're a daily listener to the Wake Up America show, you know who Ron DeSantis is. You know who all these key players are. But the problem is, and Stephanie, my wife, and I, we sometimes have this conversation. I have to remind her, like, you're not normal. You have to understand, most people are not paying attention to what's going on in the news every day, all day. Now that's my job. So obviously I am paying attention all day, every day. But most people out there, they don't know who a lot of these people are. They don't know who the governor of Florida is. Hell, I'll bet you, if other than in Jefferson City, if you were to walk over to the next town over from Jefferson City and ask the random person on the street, who is the governor of the state of Missouri? I'll bet you'd be lucky if you had 50% of the people who answer that question be able to answer who the governor is of their own state. You think most people know who the governor of your own state is? A lot of people, they don't know. They don't know. I used to love watching the Man on the Street quizzes with Jay Leno. Remember, what was the Jay Leno segment called? Do you know what it was, Nathan? No, it was like jaywalking. Jaywalking. Yes, thank you, Austin. You're not too old to run for president. Jaywalking. And he used to go out there to ask these hilarious questions to people, just random, like simple questions to people, and they had no idea what the answer was. John Stossel did it once too in New York City. He went out to Times Square and asked people like to put who was on the Supreme Court, and they said Judge Judy. Good God. No. So in these polls, you have to understand they have to ask question of people who know who DeSantis is, right? Which is a big barrier. But what would happen if Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis teamed up to run for president of the United States?
No,
I know some of you are like,
God,
I can't do it. Somebody tweeted at me this morning. They're like, I would consider this a betrayal. What the hell are you talking about? A betrayal? This is why you guys have got to just calm the hell down on some of this stuff, because let's see. Oh, yes. After what Trump has done, I would lose all respect for DeSantis, and that would make me vote for Biden. Like, what? This is Jim Wright over on Twitter. What are you saying, Jim? He says perhaps the Gestapo going door to door would make people take the threat of communism seriously. I don't think I have any concern here, though. DeSantis isn't a sellout. What?
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to excuse me.
Good God. Like, what in the hell are people talking about? Camellia says, every time I think I'm one of those people that lives and breathes the news, I'm disappointed in myself. Very funny. You guys are in a funny mood today. Quest Fanning says, DeSantis was the first person other than Trump I thought of as a likely presidential candidate who had MAGA support. I thought folks that actual disconnect MAGA from Trump worship, less sure of that now. That's actually a really good point right here. But here's what I'm reading this morning in the New York Post. Donald Trump is, quote, listening to insiders urging him to make DeSantis his VP pick. Yes, here I am getting the news out nice and early this morning. See, what happens is that I read it in the New York Post. I publish the story, or I do the story here on the Wake Up America show, and then 2 days later, Fox News does the story, right? So that's why you listen to the Wake Up America show, because you're going to hear news stories here first before they make it onto the mainstream media. Besides, who needs the mainstream media anyway? All you need is my beautiful face on the Wake Up America show. Am I right? Am I right? Yes, yes, yes. How about an applause for AP? How many times have you heard a story here on the show and then like you hear it on the mainstream media later, right? It's because I got the news fresh and hot for you, baby. Politics makes strange bedfellows, doesn't it? Possibly even Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. Now, the polls, some of them have Trump leading DeSantis in a potential 2024 race. Some Trump world insiders, according to the New York Post, are urging the former president to make DeSantis his running mate, and Trump is, quote, listening, we hear. So hilarious. I guess it's not going to be Ron Tiny D DeSantis anymore. It's no longer going to be, what was it he called him? Oh, yeah, Ron DeSanctimonious. Is that what it is? Are we going to drop all those names? Is Cat Turd, too, no longer going to be attacking Ron DeSantis anymore? So, because you all remember that, the Cat Turd on Twitter. Remember when we talked about how Cat Turd had like turned on DeSantis? And now everybody's trying to say that, oh, Ron DeSantis is a terrible governor of Florida. He did a terrible job during the coronavirus pandemic and all this stuff. And it's like, you guys, I mean, how many of them are probably just on Trump World's payroll? But one of the most fun things to watch in politics, again, is to watch people turn on a dime. It's like today they hate Ron DeSantis. Tomorrow they love Ron DeSantis. And yeah, of course, you've got people who are out there being paid to say these kinds of things. But imagine being a flack for a politician and not being paid for it. Oh, sad trombone, sad trombone. At least if you're going to be in politics, get paid for it. I know that the paid mercenaries, like the one that just walked in the door, Just kidding, just kidding. Jeremy Katie, who'll be joining us here in just a few minutes. I got mad respect for Jeremy. He's going to be talking to us a little bit about a key vote. Is it school choice in Missouri? We don't know. We'll learn a little bit more about that. He'll be able to establish for us what this key vote is about in Missouri related to public education. We'll talk about that in just about 9 minutes. But man, before we do, I have got so much big news and political news gossip and talk radio gossip that I've got to get to before Jeremy Katie comes in and spoils all of our fun with serious conversation about the news and the politics and legislation and things like that. Give him a boo. Boo. How dare you? How dare you, sir? We want to talk about Candace Owens and Steven Crowder going at it over some divorce. I guess Steven Crowder getting divorced. That in itself would not really be news in my mind, because obviously that's a terrible thing and nobody wants to hear somebody going through that. But the reason why it's news is because Steven Crowder is, alleging that Candace Owens is have made some kind of an extortion threat, and he also hints that he might take legal action if needed for anyone discussing his divorce in a way that he deems too far. Well, for that reason alone, come at me, bro. Let's have a nice conversation about it, because, this is still the United States of America and we still believe in free speech. So because you said it like, I wouldn't have talked about it, but since you say it like that, Stephen, I think that we're going to have to talk about it. So here's Steven Crowder's clip. Take a listen.
Proverbial boot on my neck for going on years now. Since 2021, I've been living through what has increasingly been a horrendous divorce. Now, let me say on the outset, to be clear, there is no infidelity, any kind of physical abuse at all on either side. And no, this was not my choice. My then wife decided that she didn't want to be married anymore. And in the state of Texas,
she's divorcing
that
him.
is completely permitted. It's been the most heartbreaking experience of my life, what I consider to be my deepest personal failure. And just so you know, my opinions on parenting and families have not changed.
I'll pause this for a second. There's a very interesting article that Steven Crowder wrote about marriage in foxnews.com. You can read it. It's from, I believe, 2015, where he talks about the sanctity of marriage. Fairly relevant to the statements that he's making right now. But
I've always believed that children need a mom and a dad, that divorce is horrible. And I still believe that children need a mom and a dad and that divorce is horrible. But in today's legal system, my beliefs don't matter. In Texas, divorce is permitted when one party wants it, period. So for well over a year, in the best interest...
Texas, divorce is permitted if one person wants it, period. Yeah, I mean, imagine, if somebody wants a divorce and the other person has a divorce. No, you must stay here. I own you. I mean, I'm not a big fan of divorce, but still, it's like, yeah. You
as well as physical safety of my children, we've decided to keep this issue private and to resolve it privately with the appropriate attorneys, what have you, legal jargon.
Okay.
And all this, one thing I want to be really clear about is certain. True north here is that my children are blameless, completely without fault, and so we decided to resolve these issues privately, as it's in their best interests, both emotionally and physically, to do so.
Yeah, it's Camellia, yes. It did seem as if he was implying that it shouldn't be if only one person wants it. Yeah, it's...
Now, the other issue is, and this is something that I've kept private for likely far too long.
Here we go.
Many other people knew about this behind the scenes.
Okay.
Some, not all, but some of them in positions of power, influence, leverage, knew of this. They also knew that the safety of my children included keeping it private. So if you're familiar with the idea of extortion, then you know the feeling well. Now, some of these threats were so thinly veiled that I'm frankly surprised you didn't all guess immediately.
Steven
is alleging extortion.
A lot going on, I guess is the best way to say it. He has a lot going on, and that should be clear because people don't do stuff like this if there's not a lot going on in their lives. I would like to implore my audience and everybody that isn't paying attention to this situation not to condemn him, but to pray for him. Sometimes people need a prayer. Sometimes people need a scripture. Stephen purports to be a Christian. I am unsure at this moment if it is my place to say more than that. Maybe if I feel in further defense, some things should be said, or maybe if I feel that the public...
God, this is such high school stuff. Maybe I shouldn't say anymore, but if I feel I need to in my defense, I might say more. God, conservative politics at the highest level is just high school, is all it is. But where's the extortion thread here? I'm not getting that.
To understand certain circumstances.
That's extortion?
Well, my children have a right to privacy. Now, some other issues have been, or I should say, inferences have been more pernicious behind the scenes with demands and threats to use this information that they believe would be so publicly embarrassing to me and my wife at a difficult time that it could be used, knowingly putting my children in harm's way. So to those self-styled Christians, conservatives, and allies, well, not in my book. Now, if you find yourself...
Man, one of the nice things about not being a Christian is not being able to be browbeaten by other Christians. Like, oh, you're not behaving like a Christian. You have to do this if you're a Christian. And now I know my next guest is probably rolling his eyes because he's a Christian. But it is nice to not be able to have somebody be like, well, the Bible says you can't do this. And I can just kind of be like, well, it's not my circus and not my monkeys.
I don't want to get into details, so this is going to likely be the only time I have to address this or want to address this. If you're asking yourself, hey, did X person or did Y person know? The answer is likely yes, which will be made alarmingly clear as this process of discovery continues. And it also, by the way, makes me that much more appreciative of those who did know about this and in understanding the best interests of my family, my children, kept their word and used discretion. I can't thank you enough. Sincerely, I appreciate it. Won't forget it. It's pretty simple. I loved a woman so much that I married her. A woman who, despite all of this, I still love as the mother of my children.
Yikes. This is just yikes. Keep that private. Okay, for God's sakes, for the love of God, for the love of Pete, can we please just move away from this stuff? Extortion? I don't know, maybe a bridge too far. We didn't get to the last part, apparently, where they're threatening potentially suing people who are talking a little bit too much about the divorce in a way that he doesn't like. I mean, good Lord, people, can you please just keep that to yourself? If you want to protect the kids, would you mind just, I don't know, not talking about it on your podcast? I don't know. Maybe I'll be a hypocrite one day and my Steffi will divorce me and then I'm crying to you. But at least I won't be able to say, well, you're not acting very Christian-like. Don't know how to deal with this kind of crap. Okay, fine. Let's get back to big brain time. Jeremy Katie's in here to talk about some bill that they want to pass here that's going to advance our freedom. Boring. No, just kidding. We'll talk about that when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today.
Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apeforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me that you never ever visit apeforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit aporlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. All right, well, it's big brain time, so if you haven't had your coffee and maybe a little eggs and bacon, it's too bad, because we're getting this started off right. No, not Judge Napolitano, he's coming later. That's big, massive galaxy brain time. This is just big brain, but a littler big brain. All right, I'm done insulting my next guest before he even comes on. I'm just kidding. His name is Jeremy Cady from Americans for Prosperity, joining us in studio now. Nice to see you, Jeremy. Thanks for coming in.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you got to listen to that rant of me talking about the divorce and all that kind of stuff, and you were like, oh my God, I can't believe there's all this news.
That was actually the first that I've heard of it so far.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't heard it before then, and I loved the Christian back and forth type of stuff. I'm sitting there going, you show me a Christian that has perfectly followed the Bible, and I'll show you Jesus Christ.
Right. But I mean, it's just like, you know, I know that I'm speaking blasphemy to you here, but I mean, it must be exhausting sometimes to have somebody always try and hold you up to the Bible when sometimes your interpretations might not align.
No, it does. And I think it's just one of those things where, you know, everyone.
The person says no. I mean, what do you do? What do you do?
I don't know. It's one of those things where that can't be I can understand being, you know, opposed. At the same time, though, you know, my parents were separated whenever I was younger. It was tough. It was hard. It was hard on the kids. But at the give and take, they're all
that helping me transition topic wise there from, because it's a stark difference from the next topic that I'm looking forward to discussing with Jeremy. Jeremy is the Missouri director for Americans for Prosperity. That is a key vote coming up in the Missouri legislature, which you might be interested to hear about. Tell us a little bit about it, Jeremy.
Yeah, so we do anytime a piece of legislation might be coming up. we sent out a key vote alert to the legislators to ensure that they're aware of our position on it. And one of those items that we did a key vote alert yesterday was House Bill 253. That is still in committee. It's in fiscal oversight. It has been voted to pass for fiscal oversight. They just haven't turned it in yet. And so as soon as they turn it in, then they can bring it up on the floor and actually have a vote on it. Now, what House Bill 253 does, it's actually sponsored by Brad Pollitt in the House, Representative Brad Pollitt. Senator Andrew Koenig has language in the Senate that was very similar to it. But it's a very, very, very simple bill. And all it basically says is if a public school wants to take in children that aren't in the district, then parents who have children outside of the school district can bring their kids there. That's it.
Is that school choice?
It is the small. It's interesting. There's a lot of reforms going on in states all around the United States, especially surrounding Missouri. So Governor Kim Reynolds up in Iowa pushed some heavy education reform legislation up there. We've got Governor Stitt down in Oklahoma pushing heavy education reform there. Newly elected Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders down in Arkansas has one of the strongest education reform packages just passed through her legislature, signed into law. That really opens up a lot of different educational options for parents. And in Missouri, what we're bickering about is whether or not you can take your kid from one public school to another public school, let alone the different other options like education savings accounts, where the state actually puts money into an account and then you can use it to go to a private school, parochial school, or use it for virtual learning, whatever it might be. Our position is that the parent should direct the education of their children. Whatever the parent believes is the best fit for their child, they should be able to provide that for their children. But in Missouri, we're having a tough time even just saying, hey, maybe you should be able to go to that other public school, which is it's concerning. But at the same time, though, it is a step in the right direction. Breaking down what we often call the illusion of zip codes. Saying that just because you live in a zip code, you must be educated here.
It's like, oh, you've got to be on the government farm in district number 9 in order to be able to go to district 9 school. You cannot go to district 10 school. It's very Hunger Games.
Very true, very true. And so yeah, so our position is, we're taking this a step at a time. There's other good pieces of legislation out there that have been filed. We've had hearings on them. Senator Bratton has what we call a true education savings account bill out there that hasn't gotten a lot of traction, but it's just because it's been so difficult to get a lot of these reforms through. And open enrollment is a small one. It's a very, very small lift, but still so difficult to get the legislature to approve of. And again, it just says, and it's even voluntary for the public schools. So a public school doesn't even have to let kids in, but if they decide to, then a parent can actually just take their kids there instead.
It's amazing. Missouri is such an interesting case study in terms of being a red state, because in some ways we are so red. We're more red than Texas, and when it comes to guns, I mean, nobody can beat us. Georgia is jealous of Missouri. A lot of times I like to say, I think I stole this from somebody else, but I like to say that Missouri is what people think Texas is. Missouri actually is what people think. Unfortunately for us, though, when it comes to like taxes, or when it comes to things like school choice, or when it comes to other conservative measures that we really should be leading on, Missouri falls behind. Right to work, perfect example. Isn't every state that surrounds Missouri, there's like 7 or something, isn't every state like a right to work state but Missouri, pretty much?
Illinois,
I'm not sure. Yeah,
I don't know if we want to be in the same category as Illinois.
No, I don't know.
But no, and it's one of those things where, to your point, Missouri, for the legislature, the grassroots, a lot of these, they want tax cuts. They want deregulation. They want to be able to send their kids to whatever school that they want to. It's one of those things where we're out across the state of Missouri talking to folks. They want all these things, but the legislature seems really honed in on just maintaining the status quo, like indefinitely. And so I don't know if it's just one of those things where we just haven't quite had that leadership yet to get us across the step. I had mentioned before that in Iowa, it was Governor Reynolds that really kind of pushed that. The big tax cut that Nebraska passed last year, that was Governor Ricketts that passed that one. And it's interesting. Kansas has a Democrat governor, but I think they've gotten more education reform bills done there.
But they haven't legalized weed.
They haven't yet.
Which is weird because it's kind of like, Kansas is more of the hippie state, right? but Missouri legalized weed first. I mean, that's wild.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where like, and I mentioned Governor Stitt down in Oklahoma, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders down in Arkansas. They all have governors really kind of pushing that, and I think having some of that leadership there. But here in Missouri, it's just one of those things where a lot of it is, how do we maintain the status quo? We're not going to get too crazy and try new things and innovate and do what's best for children here. I don't know. It's just, it's sometimes heartbreaking to kind of see what we're kind of dealing with, knowing what folks out in the state really want compared to what we see actually here in Jefferson City.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. We appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you smash that like button on YouTube or on Rumble. And we do even have a few Facebook viewers as well to help us spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. If you're wondering who that handsome bearded man is sitting in that chair right there, that's Jeremy Cady. He is the head of Missouri's Americans for Prosperity. They try to advocate for those same ideals that I just listed for you here right in my home state of Missouri. We are broadcasting from Jefferson City after all. So what else are you guys working on these days, Jeremy? Any other big items other than the key votes? Because a lot of times it can be hard to get things passed in Missouri's legislature by the time it runs out.
It can be. So another big one that we're working on right now too is House Bill 816 and 660. That is sponsored by Representatives Dirk Deaton and Travis Smith. That is actually in the Senate right now. It's in the Senate Appropriations Committee, but that's a hefty tax cut. That is an income tax cut that the House passed. It would immediately drop our income tax from 4.95 down to 4.5%. Personal income, and then I think it still maintains income triggers in it, so then that way as general revenue goes up, you still get more tax cuts. And I think the final tax cut would be down to 4.05% at the end of it, if it passes.
Better give us some tax cuts because they've got way too much money. They've got
$6 billion.
They've taken too much. That's the thing. When people are like, oh, but the politicians are like, oh my gosh, we've got such a big surplus. And they're like, spend it, spend it, spend it. I'm like, that's our money, you holes, give it back.
No, if they've got a $6 billion surplus, that means they took $6 billion too much from us.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
To run the government right there. So tax cuts, choice in education to some degree, not necessarily pure school choice or anything like that. What other issues does Missouri need to concern itself with?
A couple of other items that we're watching are a couple of healthcare issues. Our big push is for choice. So just like you should have choice in education, you should have choice in healthcare. So one of the issues that we're working on, it's called APRN license, an advanced practice registered nurse. And what it is some registered nurses go back to school for a little bit more training. And some of them even kind of get like a doctorate in nursing. And so they have more training. And because of our licensing laws in the state of Missouri, they can't actually perform the job that they were trained to do. And we've got a healthcare shortage as far as providers go in the state of Missouri. We're short on doctors, we're short on nurses. Rural areas are feeling this really heavily. We've had a couple of hospital closures, and we're again short on doctors. And so allowing nurses to actually provide the care that they were trained to provide actually creates an opportunity for them to kind of go out into different parts of the state and provide a lot of the services a lot of folks need. Now, again, once it reaches a certain level, they're going to be like, you're going to have to see a doctor for that. But a lot of what you see in Jefferson City is a bunch of turf wars. Another issue that we're working on, we're working with the Farm Bureau on this one. But the Farm Bureau wants to provide its own healthcare plan to its members.
Yes.
And nice, sweet, and simple. It's like, hey, you're a member with us. Would you like to also have a healthcare plan with us? And so
that'd be good.
It would be. It would provide another option for healthcare coverage to a lot of Missourians across the state of Missouri. Because who doesn't like it?
Who doesn't like it?
The insurance companies.
Why?
Because they're like, oh, you're going to steal customers from us, and we don't want to have to compete with you. And so in all of these issues, even on the education issues, a lot of these are turf battles. And so that's one of the great things with working with Americans for Prosperity is I don't necessarily take one person's side over the other. I'm like, what creates the most options?
Well, here's the thing. So you guys, obviously, I think you guys do a great job, but sometimes you disappoint me. And I'll tell you this one big case where you guys really disappointed me is not taking a key vote on Tony Lavasco's bill to legalize brass knuckles in the state of Missouri. What's going on with that?
I don't follow that a whole lot. But
so how much do you really care about personal freedom if you won't allow me to go fisticuffs with a set of brass knuckles? Obviously, I'm joking here, but I would like to see that bill pass. Jeremy, it looks like we're running out of time. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we let you go?
No, just make sure that you keep following what's going on in Jefferson City. Stay involved. Try to definitely make sure that you're making an impact as well. And if you would like a tax cut, go to the Senate website. It's senate.mo.gov. And then you can look up the Appropriations Committee and call them all. Be like, hey, pass this out of your committee and put it on the floor, and let's get a tax cut for Missourians.
That sounds good. That's Jeremy Cady. He is the executive director of Missouri's Americans for Prosperity, fighting for your freedom here and mine in the state of Missouri. We are broadcasting from Jefferson City after all. Jeremy, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Have a good day. We'll see you very soon. All right. Vivek Ramaswamy continues to impress. He made a statement yesterday about some files that he wants to release in the government if he becomes president of the United States. Okay, well, maybe, he might not become president of the United States. But honestly, I think whoever becomes the next president of the United States should take a page out of his playbook here. I'll play that clip for you so you can find out what I'm talking about, but you're going to have to stick around through the commercial break. That's right. Watch my commercials and buy my products so we can continue to bring you the best in morning talk on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here, and we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Hey there, it's your favorite Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to talk to you today about the Wake Up America show, the best source for all your political news and commentary. But before I get started, let me just make sure I have all my notes in order. Okay, where was I? All right, the Wake Up America show. It's a great way to stay informed and make your voice heard. Boy, what was I saying again? Oh, right. The Wake Up America show. It's important that we all stay engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on in our country and, the thing. But hold on, where was I going with all this? Oh, yeah. The Wake Up America show. It's a fantastic resource. And if you really want to make a difference, man, you can sign up to be a monthly donor at wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. Now, where was I? Oh, that's right, the Wake Up America show. So if you want to stay woke and support a great cause, head on over to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and sign up to be a monthly donor today. And if you're feeling generous, you can even give a donation in my name. Thanks for listening, and keep on keeping on, America. Come on, man.
Thank you for watching the Wake Up America. Oh, me mum, Steffi. Liberty Laura has made some designs as well. And blimey, they are great. Keychain. Plus, our Grover Cleveland t-shirt is so spicy apparently that leftists on Facebook specifically banned it from appearing on the website. Number 3. You're supporting liberty lovers just like you. Spend your money where you earn it, and you help me pups build a community that supports what you believe. Bloody hell! This commercial is running too long. Gotta run. Bye now. Don't forget to visit apforlibertyshop.com. That's apforlibertyshop.com.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Nice to see you here today. Hope you're feeling good. Thanks so much for tuning in to us over on YouTube. The Cantina crew, 52 people watching right now. Glad to have you here. Make sure you click that like button if you're enjoying the stream. I was going to say that I thought Rumble would be surpassing YouTube today, but YouTube actually blowing up. Nice to see you there today. Trump DeSantis team up? Team up? 2024? That's the topic for today. We'll be discussing that a little bit with my friend Judge Napolitano, but the big story is Tucker Carlson being out at Fox News. Got his first offer from One America News to become their news director. $24 million offer, I think, came across from One America News out in California. We'll talk about that and a little bit of the insider intrigue with Judge Napolitano when he joins us here in about 5 or 6 minutes. If you're watching us over there like Todd in Minnesota is and Mr. Embry, then please definitely click like on that stream over there on Rumble, because we do love our Rumble audience. So let's give them a big round of applause. Nice to see you 31 beautiful people watching us over there. So happy for live chat on Android devices. Rumble is pushing forward. Hope my Rumble stock goes burr. Me too. I'm also invested in Rumble. I hope to see it do well. It's been nice to see my audience growing over there. Glad to have you all here on the show with us today. Vivek Ramaswamy seems to be making a lot of waves in the presidential race. Don't know how well.
Want an engaging website to boost your business?
Sorry, I hit the commercial button instead of my social weirdness button, which is what I should have done. Vivek Ramaswamy is making waves in the presidential race for saying a lot of the things that I think a lot of Republicans, right-wingers, libertarians, conservatives, anybody who cares about actual freedom, not what Joe Biden advertised in his presidential reelection campaign video, but actual true blue freedom, care about. Let's take a listen to what he has to say.
I'm a strict constitutionalist, and I'm going to run the federal government in a manner that actually respects that. I don't believe in playing the left's game in reverse. I don't think we fight fire with fire. I think we fight fire with water. It's much more effective that way, and so that's what I'm doing on a constitutionalist, with firm, grounded conviction in the U.S. Constitution, actually setting up a 3-branch government, actually setting up a system of federalism between the federal government and states without blurring the distinctions. And I think I'm, frankly, the only candidate in this race who both has the clarity of vision, but also the conviction to see that through. So I'm a strict constitutionalist.
I like this. The thing about this tweet, though, is which is the most interesting to me, he doesn't seem to really go into strong details about here. He says the cardinal constitutional sin of our time, government using private actors to do through the back door what government cannot do under the Constitution. As president, I'll release the, quote, state action files, expose every instance in the last 5 years. How long has Joe Biden been the president? Expose every instance in the last 5 years where a government official pressured a private actor to do what the government couldn't itself do legally. It'll be ugly, but we need to see it. Wow. Okay. Are you trying to get suicided? You trying to get Jeffrey Epstein, my brother? This is fantastic. This is actually exactly the kind of thing that I think that we need to see from our government. Not only is it just good on transparency's sake, but think about what we learned from the Twitter files drop. Matt Taibbi and Elon Musk revealing how the government colluded with private corporations to squash free speech. How important was that information to us? We had already suspected it, but we had actual confirmation of it. That is unconstitutional. That is illegal and a violation of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. It is unconstitutional for the government to tell social media and private companies to squash free speech. And Judge Napolitano, I'm sure, would agree. Speaking of Judge Napolitano, let's go get Judge Napolitano. I'll be right back. I'm going to go get Judge Napolitano because I'm just dying to talk to him about the Tucker Carlson firing news, because he was Fox News' senior judicial analyst, which means the judge has probably got a lot of insider gossip, dirt, all kinds of good stuff to share with you. Where else are you going to get that kind of a conversation and that kind of insider insight? Nowhere else, right? Not anywhere else but here on the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com.
The Cantina crew. This is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter. And I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian, and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government. Get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
If I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors, what would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be. There is no typical firefighter.
Do you hate the deep state? Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways? Do you believe that aliens controlled LBJ to assassinate John F. Kennedy? Did you know that the shot can put chemicals in you that will make you more sensitive to 5G? Do you love America? Do you want more freedom? Do you like smoking hot red-headed libertarians? Then the AP for Liberty shop is for you! Check out all the awesome new merch and have a happy new year! Fight the deep state, reject the Antichrist! Visit AP for Liberty shop and get your patriotic merchandise now, or the deep state wins!
Joining us right now, of course, he's our favorite guest, and he's here with us. Good morning, Judge. Did them the most to the Republican Party's base right now. Probably the only voice being against the war in Ukraine and taking many positions that the establishment didn't like. So, Judge, I guess give it to us straight. What was your take when you heard the news?
Well, to me, it's a head scratcher. I'll use the same line I used on Newsmax. I mean, firing Tucker Carlson because of private emails and tweets critical of or denigrating his colleagues is like the 1927 Yankees firing Babe Ruth because of poor table manners. I mean, he was the Babe Ruth of Fox after Bill O'Reilly left. His job is to put eyeballs on the screen and connect with the Fox base. And again, since O'Reilly left, nobody did it better. But I guess he got under somebody's skin. It's still a head scratcher to me about why you kill the goose that lays the golden egg. I know a lot of people didn't like him. A lot of people didn't have to interact with him. He didn't even have an office in the Fox building at 1211 6th, where you and I worked together happily for a number of years. He broadcast out of his home in Maine, and once in a while, when it wasn't being the subject of picketers out front, his home in Washington, D.C. But he brought viewers. He had tremendous influence. Every major Republican in the country was yearning to get on that show because of the audience that consistently watched it. But, and you can't blame Dominion on him. I mean, honestly, if you look at the texts that were published, now there are a lot of texts and emails that came out in the Dominion case because Fox surrendered everything to the plaintiffs. The plaintiffs did not publish everything because many of them had nothing to do with Dominion. Some of them apparently showed a raw and unbridled Tucker Carlson. But if you look at the texts, there are other Fox on-air personalities whose words and behavior are far more easily connected to the Dominion case than Tucker Carlson. Lou Dobbs, Maria Bartiromo, Jeanine Pirro. I'm not suggesting they should be fired, although Dobbs has left Fox. But I am suggesting that there must be something more than just the Dominion case as the reason for having triggered this firing, because it's inconsistent to keep people there who caused you more harm and to fire someone who caused you less harm.
I'm glad that you said that, Judge, that that it's a head scratcher, that it doesn't make sense, because that was exactly the way that I felt. So many people in the media were very self-assured about the reasons why he was fired, saying, of course, it was the Dominion lawsuit, or it was definitely this, or it was the things that he said on his show that got us in trouble. I remember, Judge, before our show ended in Freedom Watch, everybody was playing the clips of your monologues and saying, this is definitely the reason why they let him go. You remember your almost magical what if speeches that you were giving the final week of the show. Little did they know, of course, that we knew that we were gone by that point. But everybody speculates unless they know what's going on behind the scenes. But Judge, you and I have been behind the scenes, you much more so than myself. The culture at Fox can be quite acidic. And many of the headlines I'm reading this morning are saying that Fox, this is Rolling Stone reporting on this, that they have 8 sources that say that Fox has an opposition file on Tucker ready to go if he were to take swipes at the network. I don't know what Tucker Carlson's contract may be. I don't know if he has a non-disparagement, or if you had a non-disparagement clause or anything like that when you all left. It wouldn't strike me as unreasonable to have something like that. But what do you really suspect in terms of, if you had to put a finger on a motive for why they would do this, what would be your best guess?
Well, I mean, these decisions are ultimately business judgment calls, and they perhaps concluded that even though he was bringing in more viewers than everybody else, he wasn't worth the cost. I mean, a lot of his advertisers were not the high-end advertisers that pay the most money, because they didn't want to be associated with their perception of the things that he said that was controversial. So it may very well have been a business judgment call. In terms of his speaking out, there's firing and there's firing. So he has 3 years to go in his contract at $20 million a year. Now, they could give him $60 million today, and he's free as a bird. He could, go work for Newsmax or start his own podcast, say what he wants. But if they pay him out over the 3 years, the 60 million over 3 years, which is what they've done to all others whose contracts they have terminated, then he is silenced during that time period. He can't do any media whatsoever. He can't do my podcast. He can't do yours. He can't do his own podcast, much less work for the competition. That's usually the way they do it. It's a crushing blow, I can tell you, having endured it. But of course, the time you sign the contract, you don't think this is going to happen. But all Fox is obliged to do under the contract is pay you, in return for which you comply with the other terms of the contract. They are not required to play you. They are not required to put you on air. So my guess is there's no upfront bye-bye payment. They will pay him monthly over the course of the next 3 years, which of course will diminish him a little bit, because he'll be utterly silent during those 3 years. And what happens after 2 of those 3 years? The 2024 presidential campaign.
Oh, wow. This is just, I mean, there's so many staggering consequences to this, Judge. And it is fascinating that, a media figure is in such a position of power as to actually affect presidential politics in this country. But the fact is that it's very true. I was listening to Glenn Beck talk to Bill O'Reilly and Megyn Kelly on his show yesterday, and they were talking about whether or not you are diminished by not being on the Fox News network. And, perhaps what Megyn Kelly said was that, yeah, Ron DeSantis might not craft his Ukraine policy to appease Tucker now. However, when it comes to podcasting in terms of power, how much power they have, Ben Shapiro has more power than Wolf Blitzer. I would argue you have more power than Wolf Blitzer, for example. I mean, now that there's a sort of balkanization in the media, you have your show, I have mine, Glenn Beck has his show, Megyn Kelly has her podcast and all this stuff. Even though there's balkanization, there's still more power in numbers that certain podcasts have, like yours, which has a massive audience, than, for example, many mainstream media figures have. It's sort of a new
Correct.
phenomenon, and we're part of it.
Correct. Well, look at Alex Jones. Alex Jones has more numbers than the four networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox combined. So if you're measuring by numbers, you're correct, and Megyn Kelly is correct. You know, it's a bit of a blow having endured it, but you overcome it. Life goes on. You turn the page. The first I've heard of this opposition research on him, meaning the preparation for this, is when you just told me a few minutes ago. I hadn't seen the Rolling Stone piece, and I hadn't heard that before, but it wouldn't surprise me since that's the way Fox operates.
Yeah, well, no kidding. I mean, there was a culture of fear there, Judge, and it was very much. It felt like it came from the top down. It wasn't as if we had our editorial messed with. I know that there's a lot of conspiracy theories about, you can't say this, you can't say that, and maybe like, the biggest talk shows on the network, perhaps they lean on Hannity to an extent, or maybe they leaned on Tucker editorially. But it wasn't really so much editorial pressure, so much as a culture of fear that existed there, in order to sort of keep people in line. But now that we're free of those bonds, Judge, we can say what we want. But there's still sort of this deference to the mainstream media that exists on the part of politicians and others. But that is starting to change. Right? There is starting to be more power that people have. Bill O'Reilly still gets big speaking gigs. I'm sure Tucker Carlson could have a big following and have a big podcast online once he's able to speak. But I mean, Judge, you certainly have seen your star, after the departure from Fox, your star has started to rise again with your show, hasn't it?
Well, competition, improves the product, and you work hard. And the audience will come to you, or in my case, come back to you, just like happens with you. Every time I turn a page, you have more and more people listening to you. And I mean, who's going to have cable in 5 years? Everything is going to be internet. So Fox has to prepare for that. Fox Nation has not taken off the way they would like it to, even though Carlson has a show there, or had a show there. I don't know that Fox is ready for the cord cutters, so to speak, which Roger Ailes warned about 10 years ago. He, of course, has been gone since the summer of 2016. Management at Fox has never been the same since he left. I can't imagine Fox management looking Carlson or looking Hannity in the eye saying, you got to stay away from this, the way Ailes could. I remember he came up to me in the whole "good for you, good" style. I didn't have any fear. I didn't have any fear when I was there, and he never told me don't say something or do say something. He would say, why is Ron Paul on every week? You really think that's going to bring you numbers? And it turned out it did.
I will never forget. I love telling people the story of how I helped to craft the initial stages of Freedom Watch with that memo that I had written while I was still working at the Libertarian Party, where I had copied a memo that Roger Ailes wrote in the 1970s, I believe, in order to start Fox News. Because Richard Nixon had done such a terrible job in the presidential debates, Roger Ailes wrote a memo, how to get Republicans on TV, right? And eventually that culminated in Fox News. And then, I copied that sort of as a love letter to Roger Ailes. And it was a memo of how to get libertarians on TV and the prospects of Judge Napolitano's Freedom Watch being a successful show. And I think I remember you took that memo to Roger Ailes, and it was, a small part of helping that show get on the air. It's sort of fascinating how everything weaves together and how we're all connected into this, and how some of us are rivals, right? And there's friendly competition, and then there's not so friendly competition. But I've been really thankful for the relationship that you and I have built over the years, Judge, because it has been a lasting and enduring friendship that I think does inspire many of the people who watch my show, because they so anticipate our conversations, and the depth of the knowledge and the experience that you have had is just unrivaled. And I like to think back to the days of you being in Kansas City, at the Republican presidential convention supporting Ronald Reagan and being a young principled activist as I was at one time. And to see how far you've come, Judge, it's certainly been an inspiring career. And I am thankful for our friendship, and I always, of course, cheer for your success.
Well, the feeling is mutual. I do about 10 or 15 of these a week. None big brain like this one is. None with a protege of mine whom I want to see exceed and excel what I've attempted to achieve.
Well, Judge Napolitano joining us now. He is the host of the Judging Freedom podcast, which you can download on any of your mobile devices. Of course, we're glad to have him here every Wednesday on the program. So, Judge, Tucker Carlson out. I mean, are they trying to sell Fox News? Is that what's happening here? Are they trying to be more mainstream? And it struck me as a little bit, I don't know, chilly, the tone when I saw Brian Kilmeade taking over the other day. And Brian Kilmeade's written some decent books, but he's no Tucker Carlson. I mean, do they even have a bench? What's next for Fox?
I don't know the answer to any of those questions, except their pattern has been to rotate people through. I mean, Brian is a workaholic, but he can't really do the 6 a.m. Fox and Friends and 8 p.m. Tucker Carlson on a regular basis. I suppose they could pre-tape the 8 p.m. show during the afternoon. But I don't want to criticize Brian, who's been my friend for many years and who's the personification of energy. But I think they're going to rotate people through until they come up with what they think is just right for them. They may want to dial back some of Tucker's statements that they perceive as extreme, but I can't imagine them leaving the conservative wing of the conservative party, whatever it means to be a conservative today. I don't know what that means, but there are people who call themselves conservative Republicans, and they have flocked to Fox, and Fox management knows that they don't want to lose that base. So whoever comes on that time slot will be someone whom they believe will maintain or grow the base without the controversy that Carlson caused.
It almost seemed, Judge, as if Roger Ailes had a magic touch, like a King Midas. Everything he touched turned to gold. I'll never forget when Glenn Beck left the network and they replaced it with The Five. I think at first, you and I and many other people were like, what is this, The Five, right? And they were rotating hosts and things like that. And nobody really understood the kind of the concept that they were going for, but it exploded, turned into a huge hit. I mean, Roger Ailes always knew what he was doing. Do you think that Fox still has that kind of a brain trust? I know it was a great loss with Ailes, but I mean, is there anybody there now who has that kind of Midas touch at all, or has that kind of that same level of raw talent that Ailes had?
In a word, no. I mean, Ailes was a genius, a television genius. It was also one of the, it's a C- student at Miami of Ohio University, and one of the smartest human beings I have ever met. Ailes had a genius for what works on the screen. If you were in his office, there were about 25 television screens, all with the sound off. He goes, I don't need to hear what people say. I know whether or not it sells by what I see. Television is visual. It is not audio. Okay. When you say taxation is theft, I know your libertarian people go crazy because they want to hear it, but it's more visual. It's more visual than it is audio. And Ailes had, we all have talents and instincts. His talent and instinct was what sells, what causes eyeballs to turn on the screen. Maybe Fox will find somebody in management like that. And if there's somebody there like that today, they came after I left. I don't know who it is.
If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm Austin Peterson, and I'm grateful to have you as a watcher and a listener. It's nice to see our audience growing over on Rumble. Let's give them a big applause today. Click like over on that stream to help us spread the message of economic freedom and personal liberty. That's what I'm all about, and that's what my guest who's currently joining me is all about as well. One of my greatest inspirations, Judge Andrew Napolitano, joining us here live on the stream, talking a little bit about some of the insider politics of what's going on or not going on these days at Fox News. So, Judge, I think we've covered that from end to end. Unless there's anything else that you'd like to add, I'd kind of like to ask you a little bit about some comments that were made by this presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. Have you been paying attention to some of the things that he's been saying?
I have not.
He actually said something very interesting that I think that you can comment on. When he talked about he wants to release these what he calls the action files. Here's what he calls these: state action files. He says the cardinal constitutional sin of our time, government using private actors to do through the back door what government cannot do under the Constitution. As president, I'll release the state action files, expose every instance in the last 5 years where a government official pressured a private actor to do what the government couldn't itself do legally. It'll be ugly, but we need to see it. So essentially, what we learned from the Twitter files and the Twitter drop, the amount of pressure that government has put on social media agencies to censor their enemies, right, that they can't do constitutionally. But I would think that that in itself is unconstitutional in what the government has done with collusion through private agencies. That in itself is unconstitutional, illegal. Am I right? Or help me
It's
understand.
absolutely unconstitutional. So if the government using a carrot or a stick induces Twitter or Google to silence someone because of the content of their speech, something that clearly the government can't do under the First Amendment, it is absolutely unconstitutional, the relationship between the government and, in my hypothetical, Twitter or Google. So this fellow, whom I know very little about, is articulating a very strong, even a cardinal principle. He's quite correct. I don't know if he's a lawyer or a legal scholar, but he's quite correct to call it a cardinal principle, that the government can't do indirectly what the Constitution prohibits it from doing directly. However, the government does it anyway. The Congress purchases compliance by giving money to the states if the states will engage in regulation that the Congress can't. An easy example of that is speed limits. Congress recognizes it can't control speed limits on the highways, but it can pay the states hundreds of millions of dollars to repave highways, providing they lower their speed limits. When that was challenged in the Constitution, in the courts, the case is called South Dakota versus Dole. South Dakota said, we don't have speed limits on our highways, but we'll take the cash. The Supreme Court said, you want the cash, you take the strings. What left-wing pinko justice wrote that opinion? Chief Justice Rehnquist. What left-wing pinko president signed that into law? Ronald Reagan. So government finds ingenious ways to get around the prohibitions imposed on it in the Constitution. This way, using a carrot or a stick to silence somebody's speech has not yet been challenged in the court, but I'm convinced that once it is challenged, the government will lose, and whoever is the recipient of the carrot or the stick will owe a lot of money to whoever's speech was silenced.
Boy, that is a good insight and good point of view. Judge Napolitano, we've got you for another minute or two. Your show, Judging Freedom, is a runaway hit. Every time I see that you're live, I see hundreds, thousands of people tuning in to hear what you have to say on current events and modern politics. It's really a sight to behold. Judge, what is your next big interview for your show coming up?
3:00 Eastern this afternoon, Colonel Douglas McGregor. Whatever happened to the Ukraine counteroffensive? Where is it? We're halfway through springtime. Where is it, President Zelensky? Answer, it's not happening. And then at 4:00 Eastern, my friend that I love to have some fun with, career CIA establishment guy, daily mass attender, Jack Devine, of course, will take the other position. Just you wait, Putin will be out of office in a year. I think it's nonsense. And my people love to hate him, but we put him on just to stir the pot. So Colonel McGregor at 3 Eastern, Jack Devine at 4 Eastern today.
I don't know many other voices that are as influential in the foreign policy space as yours are right now. Judge Andrew Napolitano, host of the Judging Freedom podcast, thank you for your insight, and we appreciate you very much for taking the time to speak to us and our audience today, Judge. Always an inspiration, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Austin. All the best. Until next Wednesday.
And you as well. What did you think of Judge Napolitano? Senator Tucker Carlson is all ready. Thank you to the people who helped make it happen. Call my friends over at Lear Capital today. There's the phone number. Write it down. Even if you're a little busy this morning, just there it is. 1-800-885-2175. Will you do that favor for me today? They might ask for some of your information so they can send you a free informational packet on gold and silver. But I want to ask you if you would do me the favor and tell them how grateful you are that they support the Wake Up. 885-2175. I know some of you have got anxiety when it comes to being on the phone. That's fine. Visit them at learaustin.com. That's LEARAUSTIN.com. But the best thing that you can do to help support the Wake Up America show today is to call that toll-free line and tell them, hey, I love the Wake Up America show. Austin Peterson's doing a great job over there. He told me to call you because without Lear Capital, the Wake Up America show wouldn't be there. There wouldn't be any Big Brain Wednesdays with the judge, right? There wouldn't be any awesome, disco balls spinning and funny commercials and great interviews and topics and guests. There'd be no Cantina crew. I wouldn't be able to pull it off without Lear Capital. Call them today. Just say, hey, Austin sent me. He wanted me to tell you thank you for all of your support of the Wake Up America show. There it is. Write that number down. 1-800-885-2175. When I get back, being old in 1776 versus being old today, right? Joe Biden is running for re-election. He seems pretty old. Benjamin Franklin was how old in 1776? He was pretty darn old. But what was the difference between being old then versus old today? I'll talk about that when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here, and we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Hey there, it's your favorite Vice President Joe Biden. I wanted to talk to you today about the Wake Up America show, the best source for all your political news and commentary. But before I get started, let me just make sure I have all my notes in order. Okay, where was I? All right, the Wake Up America show. It's a great way to stay informed and make your voice heard. Boy, what was I saying again? Oh, right. The Wake Up America show. It's important that we all stay engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on in our country and, the thing. But hold on, where was I going with all this? Oh, yeah. The Wake Up America show. It's a fantastic resource. And if you really want to make a difference, man, you can sign up to be a monthly donor at wakeupAmericaShow.com/support. Now, where was I? Oh, that's right, the Wake Up America show. So if you want to stay woke and support a great cause, head on over to wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and sign up to be a monthly donor today. And if you're feeling generous, you can even give a donation in my name. Thanks for listening, and keep on keeping on, America. Come on, man.
Good morning. Rise and freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. What do you think of Judge Andrew Napolitano on the show? Wasn't he great? I'm so thankful that I have that connection with him so that I can share his thoughts with you every Wednesday at that time on the show. We're grateful to have you as audience members. Appreciate you all tuning in. Especially nice to see all of our Rumblers over there. Frequently when I check in the morning, there are more people watching us on Rumble than there are on YouTube. Isn't that wild? We love to see it. Thanks so much for watching us. If you're on Rumble, I know some people sometimes have trouble commenting over on Rumble, and sometimes I think it could be a glitch. Perhaps I saw Allie O'Neill, for example, was saying that she couldn't comment over there. Other people were saying that you have to be signed in order to comment over on Rumble. So if you're watching us on Rumble, would you do me a favor? Drop a comment. I know we have the live chat that's going over there on the right side of the screen, but drop a comment there's underneath the video itself. Just say, hey, I liked this about the show today, or I didn't like this, or whatever. Just drop a comment below there. Let's make sure that they're working, because there could be a little bit of a glitch going on or an error. I'd be curious to see how things are functioning over there on Rumble, because of course YouTube always working very well. But it's amazing. It's a lot more competitive on YouTube, I think. But it is nice to see that we are growing over on Rumble. Cool. All right. So this article. This is one of the most beautifully written articles that I've read in a long time. And I'm going to try and read most of it. I try not to read articles in their entirety unless they are really something special. But this article that I read, it's a 5-minute read, is one of the most beautifully written pieces on historical analysis that I have read. Won't say years, but definitely in months. 80 years old is different in 2023 than in 1776. But even back then, a grizzled Franklin led alongside a young Hamilton. This is by Maurizio Valsagna. He's a professor of American history at the Università di Torino, which is interesting. So it would seem like, and I would invite you to keep an open mind, it would seem as if this article is trying to make excuses for President Biden, which I know we don't have any Joe Biden fans here, obviously. But because I thought the analysis, because we have to deal with a geriatric president, the analysis was so detailed and intricate and beautifully written that it's worthwhile to share to you, sometimes even points of view from people that we disagree with. But I thought this was an interesting analysis. Let's take a listen to this. President Joe Biden's announcement that he's running for another term raises concern for many Americans, yeah? At his potential second inauguration, he would be 82, beating himself in becoming the oldest among American presidents. Now, aging has changed dramatically over the centuries. Medicine and better lifestyles have significantly diminished the effects of time. In the past, things were much different. In 1783, for example, at age 51, General George Washington resigned his military commission and took a hard look at himself. What he saw was a wreck, nearly a Methuselah. He had grown, in his famous statement, not only gray, but almost blind in the service of my country. The author, who is a biographer of Washington, says that he can assure you that his well-known description of his condition may have been a bit of an exaggeration. Washington wasn't that old, really, although the average life expectancy in that era was 38. 38 years old. Can you imagine? It's wild. 38 years old was the expected life expectancy, the life expectancy at that time. Old people today are much younger than they used to be, especially when they are wealthy. The field of anti-aging is waxing, and data suggests that science might be able to extend not only lifespan, but also the years a person remains healthy and free from disease. Furthermore, a youthful frame of mind can have a powerful effect, increasing longevity. Have you noticed that people in your life who are older, who have a youthful mindset, seem to stay younger, right? It's fascinating. I think that, and I'm not trying to just, toot my own horn here, but anything like that. But I'm 42 years old, and I frequently see people who are my age, and they look old. Have you noticed that? I mean, I don't know if you're like me in middle age, right? Perhaps maybe you're younger, or maybe you're even a little bit older. But sometimes my wife and I will see people on TV or whatever, and they're like, oh, they're 42 years old, and they're just like fat and bald and gray, and they just look rough. They look rough. And so I think the reason why I've been able to avoid that, not only exercise, but my diet hasn't always been great, but mostly a lot of exercise. But I really think a lot of my youthful mindset has been what's kept me young, because so many of my peers really do not look that young. But I definitely believe that mindset can have a powerful effect. And this article that I'm sharing from the New York that cites the New York Times, you're only as old as you feel. Simply asking people how old they feel may tell you a lot about their health and well-being. I'll share both of these articles with you in the live stream when I've finished. But still, 82 years old, that's a pretty high number when we're talking about the President of the United States. Americans have long nurtured mixed feelings about age and aged leaders. For starters, the men who fought in the revolution and molded the young nation were themselves very young, as I cited in the presidential debates in 2016. Alexander Hamilton, who was kind of the mastermind behind the Constitution, was only 30 years old when he attended the famous Philadelphia Convention, where the document was written. In opposition to the, quote, old England vices, America was envisioned as springing out from the creativity of the young. It represented huge potential. Edward Rutledge, who was 26 years old, he was the youngest delegate to sign the Declaration of Independence, said, Great Britain has passed the meridian of her day. And while England was old age, terrified, was 78 years old, he says, our machines have now been running for 70 or 80 years, he says, and we must expect that, worn as they are, here a pivot, there a wheel, now a pinion, next a spring will be giving way. Fascinating the way that Thomas Jefferson wrote to his friend John Adams. Our machines have now been running for 70 or 80 years, and we're breaking down, essentially, he says. People in their 70s in the 1770s were usually decrepit when the American nation was still very young. But it would be wrong to assume that the founding generation simply despised old age. That's not true. Young America admired venerable old sages, Moses of the Bible, first and foremost. In August of 1776, there was a debate for designing a new Great Seal for the Republic that took place. And a commission was formed, and Benjamin Franklin, who was a member of the commission, proposed to draw Moses with his wand lifted in the act of dividing the Red Sea, and the Pharaoh in his chariot overwhelmed with the waters. Franklin's suggested motto, rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. And for those who might be curious, I have actually produced a t-shirt with a picture of Benjamin Franklin over at apforlibertyshop.com with his quote, rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. So if you'd want to wear that Benjamin Franklin quote, you can get that shirt exclusively at apforlibertyshop.com. That's AP, the number 4, apforlibertyshop.com. Now, like Washington and Jefferson, who led a revolution against a king, Moses had similarly led a liberty-loving people, the Jews, out of the shackles that tyrannical Egypt had kept them in. And America has very repeatedly relied upon very old leaders. At 1777's Constitutional Convention, Franklin was 81 years old. Now, that senior statesman didn't talk much there. He was one of the most charismatic men of the 18th century, though. He was universally sort of recognized as a prophet. He was kind of the Moses dressed in American clothing. But despite Benjamin Franklin's extreme old age, and particularly sensible of his weaknesses, as James Madison said, Franklin stood out from the younger delegates. His appearance communicated what they called an antique simplicity, a French witness held. He looked like a sage, a living, classic contemporary with Plato, as if he had come directly from the age of Cato and Fabius. Now, while Franklin was much more than someone just performing a task, old leaders back then could still look to the future and attend to many types of tasks as well. In 1798, after he had completed 2 terms as president, a worn-out George Washington at 66 years old was ready again to serve in a military capacity. War with France was probable, and President John Adams had asked for his help. Washington experienced, quote, sensations, which means mixed feelings, at the prospect of entering at so late a period of life, 66, the boundless field of public action, incessant trouble and high responsibility, and yet he agreed to serve. Fortunately for the country, war did not come. Similarly, what Thomas Jefferson achieved during his later years in life, his late 70s, is extraordinary. In what he described as the hobby of my old age, he devised, organized, and built a public university, the University of Virginia. He worked hard on his last project, which opened to students in 1825. Jefferson would die 1 year later, elated by his accomplishment. The University of Virginia, Jefferson believed, would create better leaders who would halt the, quote, threatening cloud of fanaticism polluting the, quote, atmosphere of our country. Just imagine what fanaticism Thomas Jefferson would be thinking of today, what he would be thinking about the fanaticism of today, and especially at his old university. I mean, it's been a shame to see what's happened at his university in Virginia with the fanaticism there. Joe Biden is old. His speech is imperfect. For sure, he will execute tasks, but slowly at his own pace. In many ways, he can't be a match for younger competitors. What's more, he's neither Franklin nor Washington nor Jefferson. Yet, had he lived in that earlier age, his value would have likely outweighed his deficits in the eyes of his country, a youthful country fighting against the ossified leadership of its British colonial overlords, but also aware of the wisdom that certain old leaders could still provide. What do you think about that? I thought that was a really good article. And yes, it's making excuses for Joe Biden there at the end, but an interesting and historical analysis of our founding fathers, which you just, again, you don't get on other shows, right? If you'd like to get a Benjamin Franklin shirt, Rebellion to Tyrants is Obedience to God, go over to apforlibertyshop.com during that commercial break and check it out. Type in Benjamin Franklin. You're going to see a Benjamin Franklin Buddha. You're going to see a lot of Benjamin Franklin stuff. But you'll find the Rebellion, or just type in Rebellion to Tyrants or something like that in the search bar. You'll find it. Get yourself a Rebellion to Tyrants is Obedience to God shirt at apforlibertyshop.com. We'll be back with what have I got? One more story for you? Shall I tell you? Shall I tell you? Shall I tease it out? 10 purchases millennials almost always regret. You know you probably bought one of these things. We'll talk about that when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupamerica.show.
This is Elon Musk, the CEO of Twitter. And I just want to say thank you for watching the Wake Up America show. I've decided that Austin Peterson will be the new CEO of Twitter.com, effective immediately. First thing to do, though, is I've got to go and blast off into space.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government. Get off my back. Get out of my pocket. And let me have more control of my own destiny.
Would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? You can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be. There is no typical firefighter.
Do you hate the deep state? Do you reject the Antichrist in all his ways? Do you believe that aliens controlled LBJ to assassinate John F. Kennedy? Did you know that the shot can put chemicals in you that will make you more sensitive to 5G? Do you love America? Do you want more freedom? Do you like smoking hot red-headed libertarians? Then the AP for Liberty shop is for you! Check out all the awesome new merch and have a happy new year! Fight the deep state, reject the Antichrist! Visit AP for Liberty shop and get your patriotic merchandise now, or the deep state wins!
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Happy Wednesday. Thanks so much for sticking around with us on the live show or listening to us later on the podcast. Sometimes I forget to cut it, but if I did cut it, then you get to hear it. Thanks so much for tuning in. All right, so yeah. Oh, real quick, I wanted to show you that awesome shirt that I made over at apforlibertyshop.com before I get to my last topic real briefly. Definitely want to check this one out. A beautiful shirt of Franklin's quote, "Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God." I thought you would like this. Take a look there. Pretty cool guy, that model there. You can only get that at apforlibertyshop.com. So once the show is over, you can head over there to apforlibertyshop.com. Check it out. Very attractive shirt, many different colors. You can choose whichever one that you like at apforlibertyshop.com. All right, what do you think? Do you like the shirt? Let's hear from you. Type it in the comments. What do you think? Yeah. All right, let's move on to what the hell are we going, Austin? There we go. You know, the thing. Let's see what we got here. Oh, somebody texted in and said, we'll be coming up with an emu shirt. Did you see my short about the Great Emu War that Australia waged in 1932 against the emus? If you're not watching my history shorts, you're definitely missing out. I post them on YouTube, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Yes, I do have a TikTok. I know. What can I do? That's where the young people are. That's where the kids are these days, okay? It's what the kids are doing, right? All right, speaking of kids, millennials. Oh, we're not kids anymore. We are now adults. And sometimes we make purchases or financial decisions that we almost always regret. This article in Yahoo Magazine yesterday struck game the largest adult demographic in America with 71.2 million members. In total, we consume 22% of the country's population. Even the youngest millennials, though, are several years past college age, meaning they're old enough to have made at least a few regrettable purchases. Now, everybody makes spending mistakes, but it's what we learn from them that counts. If you're a millennial, or even if you're not, you might already be guilty of making some of these mistakes. It's also possible you're thinking of making one of these purchases that will almost definitely disappoint, so take heed. The first one on the list, a brand new vehicle. Yeah. Man. Have you done that one? I totally have done that. Bought a brand new vehicle. Big mistake. Shouldn't have done that. You're just better off buying used. I mean, even if it's just 1 year removed. Although these days, with the way that the economy is set up with like used cars, it's almost like more expensive to buy used cars sometimes at some point. So it's like used cars. Probably at this point in time, I don't know if it really makes as much sense. What about you? Have you ever purchased a new car I bought my truck new, and now in order to get the value from my vehicle, I've got to basically drive it until the wheels fall off because of what you paid for it when you bought it brand new. Drove it off the lot that day. It was like, yikes, that was a big mistake. Too much house. A lot of millennials made this mistake. They just bought way too much house, and now their monthly payments for their mortgage are much higher than they need, and they don't use a lot of the space. Steffi and I, we actually bought just about the right amount of house. We've got a lot of land. We really more on the land thing than the house, although we do have a nice house. Barney Style says yes, but it was a $10,000 Chevy Spark. Now, I heard that the Chevy Sparks were really good. I'm not sure about that one though. Let me know what your situation was with the Chevy Spark, because I had actually heard that was a pretty decent vehicle. Was that the hybrid one where you could do gas or electric and do back and forth? Not entirely sure. Doug H says, I bought new in May of 21 and could have sold for a $5,000 profit last year. Yeah. Well, that economy for vehicles isn't always going to stay like that. And I thought, what about that one? Have you spent a lot of money on exercise equipment? Right? Did you buy a treadmill, perhaps, that you didn't use, or a Peloton that you've never used? Peloton? I don't know how to pronounce that. Probably you spent way too much money on something like that. What about your wedding? Did you spend too much money on your wedding? We kept ours to kind of a down low country wedding and stuff like that. Didn't get too crazy, but I know a lot of my friends spent way too much money on weddings. Another one, tech gadgets, insanely expensive headsets. Did you buy one of those things and never use it? Not sure about that one. What about expensive vacations? The thing about expensive vacations is that it's hard. You may regret the spending that you have on those certain vacations, but it's hard to regret the experiences. Like, and if you're smart, you can actually save a good amount of money on vacations if you don't do packages, because a lot of times the packages, they really screw you on price. So I would say, Stephanie and I, if you're ever thinking about going to Japan, just let me know, because Stephanie and I will give you all of our cost savings that we had when it came to our trip to Japan. There's a lot of ways to save money, and somebody tried to sell us a tour package for $10,000 for the two of us to go to Japan, and people are like, "Oh, well, that seems kind of reasonable." No, actually, at the end of the day, and we rode in taxis. We ate nice dinners. We had Kobe beef one night. We even spent I think I spent like over $200 on one dinner one night. But even with those extravagant expenses, some of the extravagant expenses we had, because of the yen, the exchange rate, and because of a lot of the other methods that we took for cost savings, because we planned our own trip, booked our own hotels, and handled everything ourselves, we saved a lot of money. And I think we ended up, Stephanie and I saw, conservatively, I would say $7,000, but it was probably closer to actually flights included. We probably spent about $6,000 on our trip to Japan. Can you believe that? I mean, that's a lot better than $10,000, right? Right? Because the rest of that money you can take and we can save and we can invest, right? So a lot of people do spend lavishly on vacations and things like that. You just gotta have to be smart about it, right? How you book your hotels and different things like that. Todd in Minnesota says, I buy guns I hope I never have to use, kind of like I put on a seatbelt and hope it doesn't get used. Yes, I'm the same way, but Todd, I'm like you. I actually try and buy investment guns. And I know you could say, oh, any gun's typically an investment, but a lot of like the newer sort of what will I say? Not gimmick guns, some of the gimmicky guns, I think, don't really maintain their value as much as like the old reliables, like M1 Garands, German Mausers, Soviet Mosin Nagants, right? Good, my Arisaka, Japanese Arisaka, Type 99s, things like that. I really like the old classics, and many of them are bolt actions, not necessarily semi-automatics and things like that. And yeah, it's nice to have some AR-15s and to be able to have the new guns that you can accessorize and like play Legos with, and I'm all for that. But they don't tend to necessarily hold their value or increase in value as like the old guns do with like the beautiful mark. I have a gorgeous Indian Ishapur made SMLE, and it's got George Rex Imperator on it. I mean, they're just not making more of those, right? It has the stamp of the seal of the last emperor of India, the George Rex, and that is, I mean, valuable, and it increases in value over time, right? Todd says he loves his Mosin. Yes, sir. And Todd also says that he bought stuff at apforlibertyshop.com, and it was no mistake. Well, thank you for that, Todd. Why don't you get yourself a Benjamin Franklin shirt. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. You can't find that anywhere else. I want to ask you all a personal favor, if you would. Even if you don't decide to buy anything, guess what? I'm giving away a free AK-47, speaking of guns. Would you like to get a free AK-47? No, I'm not talking about a keychain. I'm talking about an AK-47 chambered in 9mm. I am giving one away for free at the end of this month, and that's soon. You got 1 week left. Go to apforlibertyshop.com. You'll see there's a sign-up form at the very top of the website, and it says, enter your email here to be registered to win. You can also be registered to win if you purchase something at apforlibertyshop.com. So if you did want, say, the Donald Trump toilet brush with all the frizzy hair out there, if you buy one of those, you're entered to win. If you buy a Benjamin Franklin shirt, you're entered to win. If you go to apforlibertyshop.com, you can sign up to win at the, if you just drop us your email, then you are registered to win an AK-47. Head over there. You can also get a Benjamin Franklin Buddha. Just do me a favor, head over to apforlibertyshop.com right now and just browse around, right? We don't have to buy anything, but it'd be nice to see how many people we can convince to visit the website right now. I see 3 people visiting right now. Can we get 4? Can we get 5? After the show is over, head over to apforlibertyshop.com, browse around, take a look at some of the objects, throw some of the things that you like in your cart, right? Maybe save it for a little bit later, right? Maybe you don't want it now, but you want to save it for a little bit later. That's all I'd ask right now. Head over to apforlibertyshop.com, shop around, throw some of the items in your cart, things that you like. And of course, if you like them, go ahead and feel free to check out. We'll get your order to you right away. Help support the show by making a purchase at apforlibertyshop.com. We'll see you tomorrow. It'll be Thursday, the day before Friday, on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today. Fire.
Hello, this is Barack Obama, and let me tell you why Austin Peterson stinks, and you should never pay attention to anything that he has to say. First of all, he's a libertarian, and we all know libertarians are idiots. They don't realize how important government is to everything that we do. I recently became aware that Austin has opened up a libertarian shop at apforlibertyshop.com. Now, I'm asking you as a personal favor to me, that you never, ever visit apforlibertyshop.com. With all of the great Liberty merchandise there, the last thing that we need to do is to get people spreading this message around the country, because then they might start thinking that they don't need government. And that's the last thing that good Democrats like us want. So if you love democracy, like me, and hate freedom, then don't visit AP for Liberty Shop. Like I said, whatever you do, do not visit apforlibertyshop.com. I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to
I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
No vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.